Hello again and welcome to Module 5. This is a very important module because you'll be writing a full draft of the persuasive essay that you will revise and then submit again in um, Module 7. So let's first read the learning objectives. First of all, compose a persuasive essay using persuasive strategies that meet the needs of your audience. Secondly, you're going to use quotes or paraphrases relevant to your position, so they're supporting your position. Third, you're going to integrate APA attribution conventions throughout your persuasive essay. That means citations. And then finally, you're going to use persuasive writing techniques to persuade an audience. So it's important to know up front what the focus is of for this module. Um, I know that by now you're in the habit of reading the overview information as well as the module at a glance, so I won't waste any time um, going over those in our recording. I hope that you will read the Module 5 guide in its entirety. There's some really important information in this. First of all, why do we do a draft in the first place? We do a draft because we have to start somewhere. We've been doing pre-writing up until this point. We've been first selecting a topic, then exploring that topic by doing some research, then taking a stance because we're looking for debatable issues we're going to take a side on, and then developing a thesis statement that states what we believe to be true about our debatable issue, and then we're ready to put it into paragraphs in the form of a complete essay. That's why we draft, so that we move from nothing to having something to work with to revise. Um, we have some strategies for getting started, and a reminder that any place that it talks in the online materials about an outline, that you need to remember that that is information from a previous form or version of this course. This course does not require you to do an outline or to submit an outline at any point. I will be encouraging you to use an outline before you do your draft in Module 5, but again, there's no requirement that you do, or nor is it submitted anywhere. So again, the next one, moving forward from the outline or free writing, remember that this is referring to the outline that you may do on your own, and I will actually provide you with a sample outline when we get to talking about assignment 5-1, writing the draft. However, you have done the free writing. That was the right now exercise done in Module 4. And so there are some important things here to consider about free writing, which was just another form of focusing and organizing as well as exploring your topic. Keeping your audience in mind, I just want to remind you that you're not writing your essay to me or to your classmates. You're going to be writing this to a real group of people, people that have your debatable issue. They're interested in it, it's relevant to them in some way, they may be affected by it in some way. So one of the things that you need to do before you write your draft is to think of an audience, choose an audience of people who would in some way be affected by this topic. Okay, let's move on then to the next page. And there's a lot of resources this time, so it's going to take a few minutes to go through all this. I'm going to give you kind of an overview as well as pointing out some things that are especially helpful. It starts with a reading in the e-textbook, chapter 3, and this is all about audience. And just as I mentioned previously, you're going to be selecting an audience that's real people, so you need to think more about who the audience could be and how your writing needs to be tailored to that specific audience. The next reading is also from the e-textbook, and this one covers arguments. We've read some previously about arguments as a genre. This one gets a little bit more focused. You need to remember that we're writing persuasion, and that is basically an argument. You've taken a stance or made a claim about what you believe to be true, and now it's your job to support it, to convince your audience to consider that possibility. Um, it's not informing or teaching an audience about your topic. That's a totally different essay. And if you do that in your essay, in your draft, then you're going to find yourself having to revise and switching it back to being argument. So it's really important that you understand how an argument is focused and how it functions. The next one, chapter 49 in the e-textbook, um, talks about techniques for integrating information from the research into your essay. You're required for each of the body paragraphs to include a quote or a paraphrase, and you can just stick those in, and then your reader will be confused as to whose voice it is. Your paragraphs will be choppy. It'll be hard for the reader to follow. And so this reading gives you some information about how to use introductory phrases so that the reader knows it's changing from your voice to the voice of the research, and how to do that smoothly. The next one is another required aspect of this draft assignment. You have to cite your quotes and paraphrases. Anytime you borrow the words or ideas of someone else, outside source, you have to give them credit. And we do that by citation, both parenthetical in-text citations as well as a list of reference entries at the end. We've been doing some practice with the reference entries, but we haven't yet done in-text citation practice. So it's important that you click on these so that you know where this information can be found when you're actually writing your draft. The next one is a short checklist, Module 5 Project Draft Checklist, that asks some questions that you can do after you have written your draft to make sure that you've included all the things that are required. It's a very helpful thing to use along with the grading rubric to make sure that you have included all the requirements. The next one is a video. It's a short video that just reminds you as to techniques that you can use to make your writing more persuasive. And then the next one, persuasive writing techniques, is a little bit more specific and expansive on the different tools and techniques that are used to make a paper into a persuasive essay rather than informing or teaching or explaining. So it's a relatively short video. This is a good one. It repeats some of the readings, but it's also a good format to have it condensed and visual. Then we have a rather long list of resources for drafting a persuasive essay. And it begins with research. You may have to return to the library if in the feedback that you received in the discussion workshop last week, perhaps you found out that you don't have the right quotes or paraphrases, or not enough, or they're not relevant, which might send you back to the library. So here's a quick link back to the library databases. Content, understanding the structure of a paragraph. This is an important one both for those of you who haven't written an essay for a while, as well as those who might have written an essay recently. It's just a good review of how to structure a paragraph and what it should include, because it's important that you know that and that you consistently structure your paragraphs to be inclusive of what it should have. That's what your audience expects. So here's just a brief information about what a paragraph should include. Every paragraph, and this is body paragraphs, should have a topic sentence that states the main point of the paragraph so the audience knows what this paragraph is going to be about. Secondly, everything that follows the topic sentence is called the body, and that's where you, in this case, are going to argue for and support the stance or the claim that you have made in your thesis statement. Finally, there's a concluding sentence that takes readers back to the main idea of the paragraph. In other words, it echoes the topic sentence. What follows is some additional information about the structure of a paragraph, including an example paragraph. So that's an important one to take a look at. Next, under organization, we have information about two parts of the essay that are required in the draft, both an introduction and a conclusion, as well as some additional information about body paragraphs in essays. Introductions and conclusions have specific functions and are structured in a specific way, and so it's important that you review these as well. We're not just free writing when we write drafts, we actually are writing with purpose. Each paragraph has a purpose, and so it's important that you know what that paragraph's purpose is and structure and organize it accordingly. The last one here under organization, unity and coherence, is a really important one as well because it provides you with a list. And I like lists because then you're not having to brainstorm and come up with things yourself. You can just refer to the list. Unity and coherence just refers to that everything in a body paragraph should all be pulling in the same direction. Um, there shouldn't be any ideas or sentences that go off in a different, off on a tangent or distracting in any way. Everything should pull for the same purpose. And it should flow smoothly from idea to idea within the paragraph. That's coherence. What I like about this particular handout, the words that you use to move smoothly between sentences are called transitions, and there is a list of commonly used transitional words and phrases. And what I really like about this list is that it gives you, it categorizes the transition words and phrases. So time sequence, these are the words that you can use to move smoothly through a paragraph where you're referring to different times. Um, to indicate an addition, things like again, also, etc. So my recommendation is that you read through this entire list um, so that you familiarize yourself with what the function of each of these transition words is. And then when you're writing the draft, make sure that you're choosing the right words for the right function from this list. And then again, unity is simply having everything in the paragraph belong. You don't have any strays or outsiders in your paragraphs. Then we have focus, and we did work last week on thesis statements, and so you're somewhat familiar with that already. So some of this will be a review, but it's also a good idea to quickly click on these just for that purpose, to review the information, especially now that you've had some experience writing one as well as receiving some feedback. Finally, audience, and again, we've already done a little bit of reading on audience, so this will be somewhat repetitive, but can be used for purpose. Tips for evaluating sources. Sometimes you need to do that in order to determine whether or not the source is credible for your particular audience, if it's relevant for that particular audience. Okay, then under additional support, optional, I don't think these are optional. This is actually one of the best videos in the course about thesis statements. So this one, I can't encourage you to view this one enough. It's a little bit longer, but every slide is worth your time because it not only shows you how to write an effective, persuasive thesis statement, but it also shows you how to revise. It gives you tools for revising your thesis with a checklist. I love tools and I love checklists, and this video does an excellent job of walking you through that process. The next video, actually, yeah, this is a video, integrating quotations. Again, it's important information for the body paragraphs because, as I've said previously, every body paragraph needs to have either a quote or paraphrase in support of your claim. And you need to know how to get those into the body paragraph smoothly and effectively. So we need to know when it switches from your voice to the voice of the outside research, and we need to have that happen smoothly. Finally, the APA 7th edition video playlist is also important because these are all videos that Southern New Hampshire has developed that can be helpful in the writing of, first of all, your draft and then later your full essay. The first one, how to format papers in APA, this video actually shows you how to do it. It walks you through the correct formatting for margins, title page, all that in APA. This is a good source to know where it's located not only for this class, but for future classes as well. All right, so that is finally all the resources. I hope you will plan ahead so that you have plenty of time to go through the resources prior to writing your draft. The more informed you are about the focus and organization of an essay, a persuasive essay, the easier it will be to write your draft. Okay, so now we are to the assignment 5-1, Project Draft Part 2, Persuasive Essay with Research. As usual, we click on Guidelines and Rubric. And here we go. First of all, there is an overview. And I'm going to read the overview, and then I'm going to spend some time talking about the requirements listed under directions. In this assignment, you will build on what you have learned in the first modules of this course and submit your persuasive essay project draft. Creating a draft is an important part of the academic writing process, as it allows your instructor to provide specific feedback on how to strengthen your argument, how to better reach your audience, and whether your sources support your argument. Creating a draft is also crucial to the academic writing process, as it allows you to articulate your ideas and thoughts in an organized structure so that you can rethink your main ideas and rewrite them in a way that makes your argument more persuasive. The important thing to remember is that this is a draft. Its purpose is to be revised. Part of the writing process, very important part of the writing process, is drafting, receiving feedback, and then revising for a final product. All right, so under directions, there are some specific things that you have to address following the rubric criteria. So in a moment, we'll go through the grading rubric. Let me move myself down here so that you can see how these correspond to what's included in the grading rubric. First of all, your essay draft must have a thesis statement, and you likely will be revising the thesis statement that you developed last week based on the feedback that you received from classmates as well as the instructor. Number two, you have to have key points. There should be 3 key points in order for you to have 3 body paragraphs followed by a 4th body paragraph that will be a counter argument. And when we look at the sample outline in just a moment, you'll be able to see how that is structured better. So you're going to have 3 body paragraphs. You'll have 3 supporting key points that appear first in your thesis statement. Then they will appear 1 in each body paragraph in the same order that they're listed in the thesis statement. Number 3, use quotes or paraphrases to integrate evidence from research into your persuasive essay. Include at least 1 quote or paraphrase for each body paragraph. So we're going to have 3 body paragraphs in support, and then 1 that's a counter argument and refutation. Each of those has to have a quote or a paraphrase, and it has to have citation. Number 4, strategies. What do we mean by strategies? We're addressing the needs of the audience, so that means you have to have an introduction with relevant background information that appeals to your chosen audience. That's why it's important to pick a special or a particular group of people so that you'll know what appeals to them. And then B, a conclusion that summarizes your key points and includes a call of action for your chosen audience. So in other words, you're going to restate your thesis and end with a call to action. Number 5, persuasive writing techniques. Address and refute an opposing viewpoint to your position. So in your supporting body paragraphs, you're going to use ethos, logos, or pathos, which you will know what those are after having read that information in the required resources. And then also you need to address and refute an opposing viewpoint to your position. And again, when we look at the outline, you'll have better understanding of how that plays out. Finally, number 6, attribution conventions or citation. You have to use attribution conventions throughout your persuasive essay. So A, you have to have in-text citations for your paraphrases or quotes. And B, you have to have a references page at the end of your persuasive essay. And after you have reviewed the required resources, you will know more about in-text citations as well as the references page. It's important to also read what to submit. Some of you have had points deducted for not reading and then applying the what to submit information. So it's important that you have the correct font, that you have double spacing, that your margins are 1 inch. And here it's important to read the first sentence. Your submission should be a 2 to 3 page with an additional title page and reference page. So it can be either 4 or 5 total pages. It has to be a Microsoft Word document, not a PDF. Needs to be 12 point Times New Roman throughout the submission. Everything needs to be the same. You have to cite using APA style, any quotes or paraphrases. You have to use at least one source from the project resources and 2 sources that you found on your own using the Shapiro library. Those are all requirements. Now let's look at the draft rubric, and then we'll look at the outline, the sample outline. Notice that the criteria in the left column match the requirements listed under directions. Thesis statement, key points, quotes or paraphrases, strategies, persuasive writing techniques, attribution conventions, and then one that's not under the directions is clear communication. That appears in every grading rubric because this is a writing course where you're trying to write effectively to an audience. You should always be reading the meets expectations column, and what it describes is what you want to be able to describe what you've done, what your submission is presenting. So for instance, under thesis statement, composes a thesis statement that addresses the position. What is the position? What do you believe to be true, etc. So if your submission falls into the description that comes under meets expectations, you're good to go. All right, so now let's take a look at this sample outline that I've mentioned several times. I'm a real big believer in outlines for a couple of reasons. First of all, research and my experience as an instructor of writing has shown that students, once they put things into a paragraph, are very unlikely to make significant changes to their paragraphs, even if their grading feedback tells them that there are significant problems. That's really unfortunate because I personally go to a great deal of trouble to provide you with revision suggestions, both as to what's working well, along with what still needs more work, so that you know what you can leave alone and what you need to spend time and energy on. Part of what you're being taught and what you're learning and practicing in this class is revision as a part of the writing process, a really important part. And so once things are in paragraph form, unfortunately, students are reluctant, resistant to doing very much revision. And so the answer to that, in my opinion, in my experience, is doing an outline first, doing a very complete outline first, so that you pause and take the time to focus and organize your information before you put it into paragraphs. Because once it's in paragraphs, it's unlikely that you're going to make very big changes. So let's take a look at this outline. I want to go over it in some detail so that you have understanding of how it works overall, as well as how the individual parts work. So first of all, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 6-paragraph essay. We've got an introduction paragraph, we have a body paragraph number 1, body paragraph number 2, body paragraph number 3, the opposing view, body paragraph number 4, followed by a conclusion paragraph. So what does each of those do? I've broken it down into parts. And if you remember back in the Module 4 announcement, I gave you an example thesis statement that had highlighting that showed you the 2 parts that need to be in a complete thesis statement for persuasion. Those parts were the claim or the stance, followed by the key points listed in the order that they appear in the paragraphs, the body paragraphs. So an introduction paragraph does 2 things. First of all, it provides background information on your debatable issue. 2 to 4 sentences that give enough information for your specific audience to be ready to understand your thesis statement. So whatever kind of background information you need to get them up to speed to be ready for and to understand your thesis statement. The thesis, which will be the last sentence of a single introduction paragraph, will state the stance, what you believe to be true, followed by 3 supporting key points. And I've given you an example here. Advances in technology have made communication more effective because there are more methods to use. The advances have brought the cost of communication down, and the advances make communication easier than old methods. So we have the claim starting it up to the word because, and then the because is followed by the 3 key supporting points, 1, 2, 3, and we will expect our body paragraphs to be in that order. Then we have the first body paragraph, and the structure of each body paragraph is similar. It's almost exactly the same except for the topic and concluding sentences. A topic sentence begins the paragraph. It echoes a stance from the thesis and key supporting point from the thesis focused on in that particular body paragraph. Here's an example. One reason advances in technology have made communication more effective is there are more methods to use. Notice how that directly echoes first the stance, advances in technology, followed by the supporting point for this particular paragraph. There are more methods to use. And it is perfectly okay. In fact, I encourage it to use the same wording between the thesis statement and the topic sentences. We're not so concerned, especially at the draft level, with how much you can change wording or how much you can switch up the order of the wording. We're more concerned with whether or not you understand the function of the parts of the essay and the parts of the body paragraphs. Use the same language so that it's so clear to you, the writer, as well as to the audience of what each body paragraph's function and purpose is. The topic sentence is then followed by relevant research in the form of a quote or paraphrase with citation that supports the thesis stance, followed by your own words of explanation of how the research supports the topic sentence point and the overall argument. So you're not teaching or explaining anything other than how the research supports the topic sentence point and the overall argument. Finally, the paragraph should then end with a conclusion sentence that echoes the topic sentence to tie the body paragraph to the next body paragraph and all the body paragraphs to the thesis. Again, it's fine if you just echo directly the wording of your topic sentence as your conclusion sentence. We're more concerned here with your demonstrating that you understand the focus and the structure of body paragraphs and show that you can demonstrate that rather than trying to come up with new wording. Each of the body paragraphs that follows that same structure. Topic sentence, support in the form of a quote or paraphrase, followed by explanation in your own words, followed by a conclusion sentence. And there are 3 body paragraphs. There are example topic sentences for all 3 of them so that you can see how they echo back to the thesis. Also note that each of the topic sentences begins with a transition word or phrase that makes it clear to the reader how you're moving between body paragraphs and makes the organization very clear to them. Finally, then, for body paragraphs, we have body paragraph number 4, which is the opposing view body paragraph. It also has a topic sentence, but this topic sentence is different. It makes it clear to the reader that, okay, the purpose is different here. This paragraph functions differently from the previous 3 that have been supporting. So here's the example that tells you right away this is opposing view. Some people believe that advances in communication technology have taken away from face-to-face human interaction. So right away we know what those other people believe. Then what follows the topic sentence The content of the paragraph is relevant research, a quote or paraphrase with citation that supports the counter argument. So you would need to have a quote or a paraphrase that supports what the other people believe. What that does is show that your counter argument or your opposing view is a realistic one. It's one that people have actually had. It's not one that you're just making up for the purpose of having an opposing view paragraph. It's actually supported by credible research. What follows the quote or paraphrase then is your rebuttal. And the rebuttal is simply you saying, yes, that's true, but my stance, my claim, what I believe to be true is the more important thing to consider. And you have to know enough about both the counter argument and your own reasoning in support of your stance or claim to be able to do that. It only needs to be two to three sentences max. But think about what would it take to convince my audience that yes, some people believe this, but what I'm proposing is the better thing to believe. Then the paragraph ends with a single conclusion sentence that again echoes the topic sentence of the paragraph. And in this case, usually what it does is it goes ahead and says, some people believe this, but my stance is the better one. And then you can echo your stance. Finally, we have a conclusion paragraph, and it has two functions and two functions only. You don't continue to argue. You don't include any more quotes, paraphrases, references to outside sources. There are only two things that need to happen in the conclusion paragraph. Number one, you need to restate your thesis. And again, it's just fine for this draft to restate your thesis, like copy and paste it from the introduction to the conclusion. That's perfect. And also make a call to action. That's what we end with. A call to action is simply a couple of sentences that remind your specific audience of why agreeing with you, or at least considering your point of view, is an important thing to consider because something else might happen if you don't. That's what a call to action is. All right, and I will have a link in the announcement to the document that is a sample persuasive essay outline. Be sure that you go back and read your feedback from your classmates and your instructor when that becomes available before you start writing your draft.